Hi, I want to make a video about suffering. I intended to make this in my last video when I was talking about something else, but I want to talk about it this time, and I want to make it quick. I don't want to make it long. So it's about this suffering thing. Our thing, our thresholds are how much we can take in pain, and when is enough enough, and when do we say enough's enough? But there's almost a point, like there's a brick wall when it comes to suffering. And obviously we have the thing that makes it so that, okay, we've had enough's enough, and we obviously know there's a brick wall leading to something. There's a dead end when it comes to this kind of suffering thing. There's going to be something that's too much, but when's enough enough when it comes to the life game? Obviously, you're almost advocating for the life game. This is deja vu. Advocating the life game when you're living the life game and doing things like having kids. I went over this in the last video, I think. And having kids, and you want to make them go through the process over and over again, and just to make you satisfied, so they have to do the same thing. So we're doing the same. When's enough enough? And I want to try to find the best way to frame this, but I want to make it quick. So the idea is that we're satisfying our desires. And then, obviously, how bad does it have to get before we say the desires are no longer worth it, or the hope, the idea of something better tomorrow, not being any kind of, even a snap in our imagination, thinking forward. When it's so bad, we just say, I want death now. I don't want any more. I've had enough. I've thought it through. Or viscerally speaking, I've had a bad experience. I pick up the gun. I shoot myself. It's over. Or, you think about it, you've made up your mind, so it's all that easier for you to give up in the game. So your threshold becomes a different kind of mechanism. Your threshold becomes based on your past experiences leading to that conclusion, which comes from some kind of, not necessarily dissonance, but some kind of pain, some kind of deprivation, and recognizing the lack of something in this game, nothing tangible. Everything's just sort of intangible. It's, you touch a glass, you touch something, but you just you're touching it. Yes, you're touching it. Okay, now what? You're looking for something else. Or even if our atoms did blend with other atoms and other things, if we're just blending constantly like ghosts, blending in with things. I touch the wall and my hand goes into the wall. You're still just interacting with something. You're still just getting without the psychology, we're not experiencing anything. And it's about psychology. It's about getting that high, that buzz. Oh, it feels so good. And that's it, and then you move on, and you're ready to do the same game once and over. You buzz, then you go back, and then you're ready to buzz again, and you have to go further back, and you got to feel further like you're not finding anything worth it, so that you can get a higher buzz, only for the buzz to be fleeting, and then you're right back to the same game. What matters how high you go when you're just going to be playing the same game over and over again? In the end, it's the satisfaction. So that's sort of like a recap almost of the other video. So suffering, I want to try to find a way to describe this. So suffering, this idea of when's enough, and there's almost like this brick wall. It comes to this like idea of how far do we have to go to say enough's enough when the suffering thing, when experiencing some kind of pain, some kind of deprivation. How many family members do you have to kill before your family members to have to die before you say enough's enough? How many pets do you have to say have to die? How many bad things? How much frustration has to build up in you? Obviously, you're living. Even if you live, you said that that's not enough's enough. Yet you say you're showing it almost emotionally, psychologically, where you see a person sobbing their eyes out, and they say, oh, they lost their kids. They lost a few kids. They saw them get hit. They killed in a car accident or something like that. They use an example to prove a point here. And they cry and they sob, but they somehow find a will to move on. They turn, almost in a way applying psychology, they turn their frustration and their depression into something positive, but then obviously they turn into something positive, which reaches an end, which is, I compensated for my kids dying, but all I did was compensate. And what was the point in going through the negative when I was just trying to compensate? Or obviously the implications of how these actions and these effects and these interactions have on the future obviously is a different thing. But I'm trying to find a way to imply this, or describe it as best I can. So we're describing, we're experiencing these. You go through it, taking away all kinds of cause and effect, and thinking about you can think about obviously it comes down to psychology and experience, but you're experiencing it, and then you think about the. So I want to go back to the example. So you get frustrated, your kids died or your family died. How much family have to die? Say all your family's dead. You saw them die. Depressing. Using examples, and then your pets died. How much bad has to happen? How many people have to die around you before you say enough's enough? Instead of just increasing the standard for which you're willing to accept. And obviously, naturally speaking, things will come to their own conclusion, not on their own, but based on this mechanism that's driving this momentum, this deterministic mechanism that's going to lead somewhere. Something's going to happen based off of all these other interactions bumping into each other based on the initial cause. So one thing leads to another, and so 1 billion people, there's a human genocide, and how many people have to die before you say is enough is enough? I'm trying to find a way to describe it the way or get the point across I want to make. So there's obviously feels like there's a brick wall. So once you've said there's enough's enough, your threshold, you've hit a brick wall, and you said enough's enough. And if you're living, even if 5 billion people die, you say it sucks, but you're still sort of living through it. You're still advocating, you're still living through it. Let's make something more to compensate for something you thought was so bad. So compensating for something almost like, say, bringing back the human species so that you feel like you've accomplished something in compensation for all the bad that's happened, or you feel like you've caused, or you've been a part of, to make you feel like not as bad as you were to begin with. And what in reality all you're doing is not doing much. There's nothing to compensate for when you've killed all these people. You've taken away future suffering, but once you've taken away that future suffering, what you're compensating for is nothing but you can't compensate. You're not compensating for anything once the people have died. They've experienced everything. They've suffered. And compensating by doing something else, those people are dead. You're not compensating for it. It already happened. The suffering is the only thing that matters. That's the thing that carries the weight, and you're not compensating. You can only sit there and try to mitigate any more against the future things that are going to happen, the negative things that can happen in the future. So when's enough enough? There's a brick wall, and that brick wall is saying, I can't take anymore. I can't take this sentient experience of pain and deprivation anymore, so you decide to end it, or any kind of circumstance that you can think of. I can't take it anymore, so I'm going to move out of this house. I can't take it anymore, I have to eat. I can't take it anymore, I have to do this or that or this or that, depending on the circumstance. And overall, talking about the life game, how much suffering do we have to go through before we decide enough's enough? But it almost seems it is just on the scale, how much are you willing to take it back and endure? And then once you reach the brick wall, once you know you can cry, you can show it emotionally. It's applying psychology, you can looking at a person sobbing, but they live through it, and it almost mitigates against the idea. You cried, okay, but that didn't change what happened. You reacted, but it didn't change what happened. And once it happened, your crying doesn't change it. You lived through it, and you're still moving on. So it almost seems like you're almost completely, it's ethereal. It almost seems like the death, even though it meant something in and of itself. You don't need you to cry at seeing or react negatively and feel it inside of you. Obviously, that thing's causing you suffering. But if you find a will to move on and use it to compensate, obviously the only thing that exists are these negatives moving and trying to mitigate against these negatives. And when you decide to move on and say that, well, I can live through that, another one of your kids dies or another one of your family members die, and then you find another way, you sob and sob, but that doesn't take away from what happened. It almost makes the whole experience like poof, dust in the wind, a poof of thin air. It doesn't mean anything because you still found a way to move on and make it a thing of the past. I think that's a good way to describe making it a thing of the past and still moving on. And when's enough enough, and once enough's enough, it almost makes the whole point. Obviously it means something because it's causing you suffering, but once you decide I can't take this experience anymore, this life experience, your experience ends. You decide to end it all, and how much suffering, obviously, which means you decide to end your life, obviously can cause other suffering and mitigate against the suffering. Well, I have to use a knife, I don't have a gun. I have to go get a gun. What drives you? How you weigh these decisions. I need to go get a gun. I need to go get in this or that. And then you weigh all these things. There are these mechanisms. You want to cope. How much do you want to cope? How much do you want the ability to cope? How much do you want to go out of your way to cope? How much do you want to go out of your way to make the decisions to say, I can't take it anymore, but I have to go out of my way to end it or do something like that? How much am I willing to give up? How much am I willing to give or take? And how much can I take in this life game before I say is enough, and say, all these bad things, these deprivations happen to you. You say is enough, you cry, you show the emotion, but you obviously haven't hit that brick wall. You're still floating somewhere in the middle. So you're still floating in the middle. Obviously, you're more close to snapping and saying enough's enough. But you're obviously still in the life game, and you almost make it a thing of the past, and it becomes just another thing of the past. Maybe it makes you stronger. And it's like, well, maybe another one of your family members dying can add to the weight and just end it all viscerally, immediately. You just say that's it. or it can just make, I'm stronger now. I experienced some hardship, but one more person wouldn't matter. And once that one person dies, it makes it even stronger. And then, 5 people can die and it makes you even stronger. You're just mitigating against that death. What's the point of becoming stronger when it takes away from this pain? And then, becoming stronger psychologically and physically, and when it doesn't accomplish anything beyond satisfaction that is fleeting and pointless. So you're just getting stronger and stronger, and you're feeling less and less, and life is about feeling. So what's the point in getting stronger when you're not going to feel as much? But the feeling that you feel from these things is so strong that it becomes a weight, and it becomes the reason not to live with these strong feelings, but the reason to live is these feelings. But when you get too strong and you become become immune to these feelings, then what's the point in moving on when you're just a drone? Oh, okay, well, they died, and okay, I can live, it's whatever, okay. What's the point? And that almost becomes a problem in and of itself. I mean, this builds up, and you become stronger and stronger. You could deal with it more. You become more. You build up and get stronger and stronger. And it's just a self-feedback mechanism. It's like, it takes more, but then it feels something, but the feeling is negative, and it's and it gets stronger. Oh, I need negative, and then it's like, okay, all you're doing is getting negative more and more and more, building up the negative to feel stronger. For what? For what? You don't need the negative to begin with. It's about why have the negative to begin with, just to get the positive. Why didn't you just stay in a nice, flat, benign middle position, as opposed to just getting stronger but needing a more negative to make you feel something again, to make life some kind of meaning, give it some kind of, I need to escape this, about escaping something. That's all it is, about escaping something. But then it's a negative and you just want to escape it, then you get stronger, then you get a greater negative, make you feel something to escape that. And it's just, you're putting things to the past, and you drive forward anyway, even though you've lived through these negative experiences, and you just keep going and going, regardless. And it just creates this weird cognitive dissonance where you can't do anything. That's the mechanism. It's either you're stuck with death or getting stronger and becoming immune to it in a way, and living with it and almost mitigating or completely, obviously, the suffering or whatever it may be of something happening, whatever it may be, even if it's an inanimate object or whatever it is. But say it's another person dying, obviously it still matters, and it still matters to you, but the fact that you lived through it, it almost means nothing. It's a thing of the past that happened. Yeah, my kid died. Well, I'm here. Yeah, I'm living. Obviously had an effect, but you're still living through it, and you become almost, it takes away your ability to feel, and the more that you get used to things, the more likely you're not going to have as much of a reaction, more of a feeling. So it's just, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's nothing you can do. It's a mechanism that we're living by. You say it's really bad, you live through it. Well, it's happened in the past, it's done with, you're still here, it didn't affect you, your psychology found a way to cope with it. It's all about coping, but coping too much leads to what? Nothing. Getting stronger, only needing a greater negative to make you feel something, make life worth feeling like you need to escape something, giving some meaning, some feeling, and then it becomes a depressing, and then you need to get more depressed to feel stronger, and so on and so forth, but you need those feelings to feel something. It becomes a pointless cycle, feedback loop that doesn't have any practical purpose beyond what? Finding some use in it for what? To escape, to cope, to make whatever feelings we have pointless, to get stronger, to do what, and repeat it over again. There's no point to that. And if you live through it, well, I lived through it. Now, how many more people have to die? Well, and the more people die, the more you get stronger. Though you decide to snap, and whatever happened means nothing because your existence is over. It happened, it means something, but once you're dead, to you, your perception means nothing. You've ended the point. That it proves the pointlessness of it. And if you just keep getting stronger and accepting it, what's the point? Because it's not affecting you. You're not feeling anything anymore, other than the feeling of maybe depression and. Not necessarily depression, but obviously you're not feeling anything until you start. The self-described feeling is depression, and these feelings of emptiness and strong coping mechanisms, and the depression of not feeling anything almost becomes an added weight to that kind of idea. So I think that's all I want to say. Yeah, we're all screwed anyway. There's nothing more to this game. And if you decide to live through it. You're just begging to lose all kind of feeling. Cope, well, they meant something, but they're dead now. I mean, what's the point, right? That's just your psychology playing games on you. No. So anyway, thank you, and until next time. Bye.